Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Thank you for your patience. I have a couple questions, but first of all, I wanted to thank your leadership in the department for taking an active and proactive role in looking at our wastewater treatment plant here in Albany and making sure that we're doing all we can to prevent pollution from going into the Hudson River as a district that is downriver from that plant. And I was really thrilled to see your leadership there. I wanted to ask you about water, and one of the issues that I'm concerned with regard to my bill that I put in place, it was a ban on accepting waste from other states that might be engaged in fracking, the fracking process. My concern was that it was my understanding that there was water being, that was the result of the fracking process coming into the state or being disposed of, or the waste product from the fracking process was coming into New York and being disposed of in New York State landfills. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about if that, in your opinion, is occurring. How does the agency monitor that? How do you measure what might be in those tanks that are coming into New York? What do the local landfills have in place to protect our residents from, unknown chemicals or things that we frankly don't want going into our water? So if you could respond to that, I'd
Sure.
appreciate it.
The only waste coming into New York from out of state having to do with drilling is the drilling waste. It's not produced water or wastewater per se. It is drilling waste, which is primarily the rock and the subsurface material that is ground up when a well drill does its thing. But
So it's
for
not
landfills,
liquid, it's not liquid form is what you're saying? It's solid?
It could be in liquid form because water can be used in the process, and depending on what is used, whether it's water, if it's water or air, it's mostly rock and water, and that can go, that can actually be buried on site. But if they use oils or other petroleum products, then it has to go to an MSW landfill, permitted, 360 permitted landfill. It's permitted in New York. The primary concern with that type of waste is radiation, because drilling does occur in formations where radiation occurs. So all of the landfills that the waste, the 4 landfills in particular that waste is accepted at in New York, all have radiation detectors. And then we have a very, very explicit protocol that they have to do when they bring those loads of waste to the landfill, so that it's, and the instrumentation has to be calibrated, the levels are specified, just above background, they are triggered and go off, and I understand at least one load that's come into New York did trigger a detection device, and the waste was rejected. So we carefully check those. All 4 landfills have radiation detection equipment in operation.
How do you monitor whether or not they're complying with regulations? So if the regulations stipulate that they have to test?
Yeah, their permits do.
Is it mandatory or voluntary?
It is mandatory. It is in their permits. They've accepted this as a condition of their permit to operate. So it's included in their permits. So we do inspections of these facilities. So I believe we have a very good handle on this.
Okay, and how often do you inspect, and how much do we know how much is coming into the state from, say, Pennsylvania or wherever it's coming from?
I'm sure I can provide you with those numbers, but I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
Yep.
I'm also concerned about, because I'm concerned about the water and
Sure.
making sure we're not polluting our water, that we allow the brine from the fracking process to come into New York State and be spread on our roads. That's my interpretation of that's already occurring. Is that correct?
Not from
allowable?
high-volume hydraulically fracked wells. From conventional wells, we do allow brine to be used, but only after we do a beneficial use determination where the brine is actually tested for constituents. We do issue beneficial use determinations for the use of brine when it is just a very salty product, but we carefully look at it before we issue those determinations known as BUDs.
So the brine is coming from the hydraulic fracturing wells in the state or outside of the state?
There aren't any wells that hydraulically, well, there's no high-volume hydraulically fracked wells occurring in New York. So it's not coming from those because they don't happen in New
Right.
York.
But it is coming from the more traditional wells?
Conventional wells.
And is it coming from out of state where they are doing hydraulic fracturing, high volume?
I'm not aware that it's coming from out of state. I know that in-state production wells, brine, people do apply to DEC for beneficial use determinations.
Okay, and if that were to occur, that they would come in from out of state, would you be notified? And,
I think we would, yes, we would know where it's coming from, yes.
okay. Is there a concern, and I know we have not made the decision yet in New York State to proceed with high-volume hydraulic fracturing. Is there a concern about water usage? I know in Pennsylvania, they use an enormous amount of water in the process. And is there any water being used or shipped from New York State for that process occurring now?
I'm not aware of any water being shipped to Pennsylvania.
Is that a concern? It's just the amount of fresh water that it takes to frack one well could be 3.5 million gallons a day. Just concerned about, is there any concern that water is being taken from New York State into Pennsylvania?
We have a new water withdrawal law in New York. So if anyone is, what's the threshold, Mark, 100,000? If they can have the capacity to extract more than 100,000 gallons a day, then it triggers the need for a water withdrawal permit from us. So we would know if someone is going to withdraw those amounts and ship them to, and we would know the use and the destination. Thanks again to a relatively new law in the books.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.